said, you know what name is not cute? Bobby Hall.
Or Logic, for that matter. So this time we're talking about Supermarket by Bobby Hall, also known as Logic. He's a rapper. He is a rapper. Do you listen to him, Steve?
I know a few of his songs, yeah. He's a good rapper. Not so much a good author, but I think we'll get into that in a second.
So it basically is about this guy named Flynn. He only has one mental disorder, correct? He's schizophrenic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he's writing a book, and to get like some ideas for characters, he takes a job at a supermarket to use those characters in his book. And it's kind of about how those characters begin to play a role in his real life. And then, I don't know, are we doing spoilers?
Yeah, let's just do spoilers.
And then it kind of ends up, you find out like the characters in the book, some of them aren't real, and he's been stuck in a loop. And so he's in a mental hospital towards the end, and you kind of figure out how he gets everything figured out, I guess. To sum it up, did I forget anything?
No, that's good. Like when you put it like that, there are good elements to the story. Like,
yeah,
the actual story has some foundations where it could be kind of a cool story.
Yes.
It just was not executed.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that. I feel like it had good bones, but it didn't come together well.
No.
The
I
writing
rated it a C minus D plus. Like, probably actually D. I'm going to go with a solid D. Because the writing was terrible. It was as if you were in the mind of like a 14-year-old boy who just said and did everything he wanted to do. But like in the version where he's writing about himself, makes himself look really cool. It didn't have a whole lot of story going on. Like, there were elements to it, but it wasn't like, oh, you're going on this journey and you have to accomplish this and whatnot. Like, it's still pretty flat the entire time without a whole lot going on. For those reasons, I rated it D. I would not recommend, I would not read again. It was just not a very well written book. What do you rate, Anne?
I rated it a C minus. And I often compare it to Catcher in the Rye because he also has some mental issues in the writing. I liked that book a lot better. This one, like, I don't like when it's like he's just talking. He's not like writing a book. Like, he's not telling a story. Like, half the time he's like talking to the reader and it's like, I shouldn't be telling you this, or like he's talking to you as you read it. And like, that's okay for like the first page where they're like setting the scene, and then it doesn't happen anymore. So it's kind of weird that he talks directly to the reader. I thought that was kind of annoying. And like the things he thought or were saying were just so like juvenile that I was just like, oh my God, this guy is just like one of those typical like young boys, like just so stupid. So yeah, C minus for me.
Steven?
I would also give it a C minus. Like you guys said, it's kind of like a bunch of frat guys. Like, imagine a bunch of frat guys at school and they're like sitting in the frat basement and like smoking weed and like, hey bro, like let's write a story, and then they just like pull out a computer and start typing. It's kind of like the end result. Not very good writing. Not a very complicated, interesting story. There's not much of a plot that's going on. Generally not a super great book. It has potential though, I think, as we've talked about. It deals with like imaginary people in your life. You know, it's been done a million times in movies and TV, but like where the main character is going along and then all of a sudden like someone who you thought was real the whole time turns out not to be real, and then you read it back and you're like, oh, that, you know, I can see why, you know, there's little hints along the way. But this just, it didn't go anywhere. It wasn't interesting. It wasn't anything different than what's already been done. So that's my one contribution.
But I feel like the hints in this weren't even that subtle.
They were so blatant. And a good example is like the dog. Like, he's walking his dog and someone's like, hey, bro, you don't have a dog. And it's like, oh, like the dog isn't real. It wasn't if you wanted to do it right, you'd have like the subtle hints scattered throughout, and then you wouldn't find out till the end. But here it's just like you knew pretty early on who was real and who wasn't. I think Courtney spotted out like the very first
Yeah.
week. She said like half the people weren't real and ended up being right.
Yeah, she had a lot of good hypotheses.
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 There we go.
But is it because of the writing or because she read ahead?
We're not sure.
Good question.
I also didn't like any of the characters.
No.
They were
They were
not that I was like,
all-
yeah.
They were not relatable. You weren't rooting for anyone. Like even the dog was fake. There's just nothing positive about this book.
Mia was dumb.
Me was so dumb. Who stays with a guy you've been dating for a couple weeks while he goes to an insane asylum for 2 years?
2 years, because he's had a major psychotic break.
And he cheated on you with someone that wasn't real.
With his alternative personality or alternate personality.
A coworker, nonetheless. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, she has questionable choices as well.
It was
Although I'm surprised that she was real. For the last part of our reading, I thought maybe she was fake, but
I
it
think
left it open-ended. Like it didn't say that she wasn't, right?
Yeah, I think she was fake, like real. I don't think they ever said she was fake.
I think the ending would have been better though if she was fake. Like they're sitting there at the diner and then you get some clues to like that's not reality either. That would have been better.
That would have been better. Although kind of a letdown because like then what's the point of the whole book if like even that reality is fake? Like what can you believe at all? That's why I didn't like the show. What's it called? I really don't like shows where it's like they wake up and they're being in a coma the whole time. Because then it makes everything beforehand seem pointless. Like you just watch this entire movie or read this entire book for no reason. It was
Like it's a cop out or something.
yeah. Liz, would you rate it?
C-. I can't get over the dialogue. It's like an 8th grader wrote it. The dialogue is the worst part of the writing. It's embarrassing. I like cringed when I read it. So C-.
So like
You're in
We're
a
also
sleep
awake.
Eve.
Even my dog's so asleep.
I felt like I started to try to envision, like once you find out like so much of this is fake, you try to envision that like he's Frank and this guy is just like beating himself up in aisle 6 and his girlfriend's there and she's just like cool with it. She's like, okay, we'll get through this. And then like she just stays. And I'm like, what? Like this guy's like literally beating the crap out of himself. And then supposedly hits his head and he is cured of schizophrenia. So she's like, okay, well, let's go to New York and live happily ever after. I was like, after they've known each other, like, I guess by then it would have been several years, but it was like she decided to stay with him after like a month at the most.
That's why I
He
mean.
also has
Oh, go ahead.
$9 million. Like, do you think
Yeah.
it's worth it?
No. Because is that 9 million even real or is it fake too?
Yeah. Good point.
Well, and he can't spend it because he's in the asylum. So he's like, it's not like she's getting this money for the 2 years. Because when he like comes back to the real world, he also thought she was in it for the money. Remember that part where he was like, she has to be. What else would, like, even he thought it was crazy that she was staying with him.
I never really. It's so unrealistic that he submitted the manuscript, and more or less the manuscript is the book that we read, and it was so well received and won all these awards, and he was given $9 million for like how great of a book it was, and very unrealistic.
It was just very, yeah, kind of to your point, unrealistic, but also like very cliche moments. Like he got $9 million. Like when Mia like falls in love with him, and they're at the golf. That was like the worst scene ever in this whole book, when they're at mini golf. It was just such a cliche like scene from a typical movie, but very awkwardly written. It's just everything that could have been like front of mind, first thought that came to your mind when you're writing. It's like he wrote it down without even thinking of going in depth or, to second level of making it more of a concise story, or like more of a authentic story.
It was like he watched a bunch of chick flicks, but has never actually been on a date.
The cereal. Like,
yeah.
I was like, are these people seriously trying like 10 different kinds of Captain Crunch in this? I thought that was so weird. And that became like a big part of the story. And I'm like, this is so weird.
Crunch time.
Yeah, like this is so dumb.
Really?
And then he like helps for golf, like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, not good. I don't know. I would not recommend it.
I feel
Logic
like
should stick to rapping.
I need to listen to some of his songs. I don't think I've heard them. But I don't think I recommend this one. I don't even know who would want to read this, unfortunately. That sounds mean, but actually I saw another YouTube video where they rave about it. They're like, this book changed my life. I love it.
Like, maybe if you had like similar problems to him, I could see like wanting to read it, maybe. I don't know.
Do you think that does Logic actually have schizophrenia, or do any research? Like, is this a real representation?
Liz, he bonked his head and it became better. Like, I don't think there was real reason.
There should be disclaimers on this book. Not a doctor. Don't try to cure schizophrenia by hitting your head on a supermarket floor.
He does rap a lot about like drugs and relationships and pills, and that is like a kind of a focus of his music, but that in no way makes it so that he can speak on these issues or knows what it's actually like, to the best of my knowledge.
I'm gonna have to research this. And didn't he make a album to go with this book?
Yeah, so there's a companion album that came along with the book. It was equally panned as being absolutely terrible. So I haven't listened to it, but just if it's named Supermarket and it's by Bobby Hall, maybe just music, book, TV, maybe just stay away from it.
If this gets made into a TV show, I will just throw in the towel.
Just quit life.
Like, if that can be successful or made into a movie or show before Throne of Glass or ACOTAR, I will just never leave my house again. I won't, I guess, throw in the towel, but wouldn't be happy.
I agree. This does not warrant a TV show. We do not need more Supermarket.
I'm even hesitant to post this to get any more attention or any internet like mentions for him on this. But people have to know. They have to know the real ratings behind this book.
It's a public service.